Hey guys, welcome in for another episode of Breaking Boards. My name is Randy, and in this video, we're going to take a look at 3 plays that I think you can take advantage of and 3 fades in rounds 1 and rounds 2 over on DraftKings NFL BestBall. If you get anything out of the video, please drop a like, subscribe, and leave me a comment letting me know which players you agree or disagree with. Let's jump right into it, guys. No time to waste. Play number 1 we're going to look at is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver Devonte Adams, going off the board at pick 18.7 or the wide receiver number 12. First, let's discuss the negatives related to Adams' situation in 2024. There's some uncertainty in the QB room in Las Vegas. Given the options of Gardner Minshew versus Aiden O'Connell, there's not a ton of variation in outcomes between these two quarterback options. Las Vegas also retained former interim head coach Antonio Pierce, and they brought in former OC from Chicago, Luke Getsy. I foresee this offense being somewhat run-heavy in 2024, but given the projected win total of 6.5 on DK, which has some juice to the over, indicates to me that Las Vegas should be trailing in a majority of their games in 2024. Now let's look at why we would want to consider moving Adams up our draft boards ever so slightly. To me, it feels like Adams has been in the league for like 57.2 years, and don't fact check me on that, but he's headed into his age 31-32 season. Adams has ranked in the top 5 at the wide receiver position for targets per game in each of the last 6 seasons. And there's a wide receiver coming off the board ahead of Adams who is ranked on average as the wide receiver 33 in targets per game since he entered the league, and a player that we might discuss later. And yes, this is foreshadowing. We discussed a bit earlier the QB options in Las Vegas. However, since leaving Green Bay, Adams hasn't exactly been playing with prime Patrick Mahomes. In 2022, he played alongside Derek Carr and Jared Stidham. And in 23, he played alongside the likes of Aiden O'Connell, the ghost of Jimmy Garoppolo, and Brian Hoyer. So regardless of who wins out at the position of quarterback, I see it remaining par for the course. And I foresee another good year from Adams with some potential room for growth if there's a trade involving Adams at the trade deadline. Let's take into consideration, for instance, how high would Adams be on your draft board right now if news were to drop today that Adams will be traded to Buffalo prior to week 6. I think with all things considered and the possibility of moving Adams during the season for Las Vegas, I would rank Adams somewhere in the pick 16 to pick 18 range over on DK. And given that he's going off the board at pick 18.7, he's not moving up a ton, but I want to move him up a couple of picks in this spot. Now, with that being said, moving up a couple of picks in rounds 1 and 2 is huge. Player number 2 we're going to discuss, and a player that we're not interested in, is going to be the Atlanta Falcons wide receiver, Drake London, and he's going off the board at pick 15.8, or as the wide receiver number 10. What's to like? Well, London and this entire Atlanta offense is going to move from the likes of Desmond Ridder and Tyler Heineke to Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix, the worst draft pick ever in the NFL, in 2024. Atlanta also kicks to the side former head coach Arthur All I Know Is Run the Ball Smith for the likes of Raheem Morris at head coach. But maybe more importantly, Zach Robinson jumped over from the Sean McVay coaching tree in Los Angeles to take the OC job in Atlanta for the 24 season. And while I do like the player, I think we may have jumped the shark a bit with Drake London in drafts in the 24 offseason. I do see things improving for London this year, but I also find it important to manage our expectations. Since coming into the league, London has finished as the wide receiver 44 and the wide receiver 48 for targets per game. And again, I want to mention that I do see these numbers improving, but determining how much can be the trick and being ahead or behind the market in this spot. Last year, London ranked as the wide receiver 51 for red zone fantasy points, ranking just ahead of perennial top wide receiver Devonta Turpin. If we're being truthful, I'm actually higher than I want to be in my rankings on London, and I have him rated as the number 17 or number 18 player going off the board in 2024 best ball drafts. Although, if we're being honest again, I think this makes me need a shower. I prefer very slightly player number 1 on our list, Devonte Adams, in a vacuum. My player exposures to each of these first 2 players will be determined by stacking options. If I get Adams and I plan to do a backup stack with Taysom Hill at tight end, or if I snag London and I plan to stack McLaurin and Jaden Daniels later in drafts, depending on construction will determine who I take in the range of 14 and the range of 18 in my best ball drafts this season. Again, talking about the poker analogy, I view these players as hole cards. I want to get an ace in round one, and I want to get an ace again in round two. And to me, there's just not a lot of aces on the board in round two this year. No matter which of these players that you prefer so far on our list, I see it as just splitting hairs. So you want to have a plan no matter which player you select early in drafts. And no matter which player you end up with, whichever player you take, just remember that player is an ace, whether you want them to be or not. Player number 3 on our list, and the second player that we're going to be interested in is going to be the Los Angeles Rams running back Kyren Williams, going off the board at ADP 24.4 on DraftKings, or as the running back number 9. Looking at the negatives for Kyren as we head into the 24 season, the Rams did add Blake Corum in the NFL draft, and Corum is a player that's probably going to eat into some Kyren's workload. But by how much? Keep in mind that I'm strictly guessing like everyone else in this space right now, but I see Corum eating away somewhere in the 30% to 40% range of Kyren's workload. So what kind of value can we place on 60% of Kyren? This is a Rams squad that scored the 9th most points per game in 2023 at 23.7. And Kyren played in 12 of those games in 2023. Oddly enough, that places Kyren missing around 30% of the games in 23. And even with missing so many games last season, Kyren finished the season as the RB2 in full PPR sites at 21.3 fantasy points per game. I don't foresee this Rams offense differing greatly in 2024 from a game planning standpoint, so I view 24 Kyren the same as I viewed 23 Kyren. Obviously, we're not getting the same draft capital discount during the 2024 draft as we were seeing with Kyren in 2023, where he was going in rounds 18 through round 20. But I do think the hate of Kyren has gone a little too far. Depending on your draft strategy and depending on your typical wide receiver avalanche in rooms in 2024, I have Kyren projected in the pick 20 to pick 23 range. And that's not a massive value at current ADP. However, as we discussed before, moving up just one spot in ADP this early in drafts is quite significant. I do feel that Kyren does equate as an ace level player in 24, and shortly following Kyren, I think we see a significant drop off to a bunch of king and queen level players for the next couple of rounds. In my opinion, Kyren offers a nice balance of floor with some slim upside and a little bit of safety at this position. I feel perfectly fine drafting Kyren at his current ADP if I find his name at the top of my draft board and if he fits a team need. Pick number 4 on our list, and the second player that we're not going to be interested in is going to be the Indianapolis Colts running back, Jonathan Taylor, coming off the board with an ADP of pick 16, or as the RB number 6. The dislike in this spot is more about the situation versus the dislike of the player. Indy I foresee as being a run-heavy offense historically, and since adding a QB like Anthony Richardson, I believe this will lead them to running the ball more frequently. However, that could be a great thing for Jonathan Taylor, and it could also simultaneously be a terrible thing for Jonathan Taylor. This team plays at a very fast pace, and Jonathan Taylor will serve as the first down and second down running back for most, if not all, drives when he's active and healthy. However, in PPR formats, a reception is on average worth 2.5x a rush attempt. And honestly, it's yet to be seen if Taylor will serve as a 3-down back. I mean, there's not a lot of depth chart battling going on right now in Indianapolis, but that doesn't mean that someone can't get dropped and they won't pick someone up. Taylor may also come off the field in 2-minute drills, which is another significant chunk of PPR scoring. Taylor will also be contending with Anthony Richardson for red zone touches, and that's going to limit his potential rushing upside for touchdowns. Taylor, while missing a large amount of games over the last 2 seasons, has finished as the RB12 and as the RB number 23 in running back PPR points per game. Taylor is currently being drafted as the RB number 6. In this particular format, there's just not enough of a gap between guys like Taylor and guys going later like Devonta or Kyren Williams. I do see Taylor finishing the season somewhere inside of the top 10 at running back. However, I prefer to draft Taylor on a site over like Underdog versus drafting Taylor on a PPR site like DraftKings or Drafters. Player number 3 that we're going to be definitely interested in during 2024 best ball drafts is going to be the Miami Dolphins running back, Devonta. He's going off the board at pick 21 or as the running back number 7. Miami added another running back to the room for the 24 season in Jalen Wright during the draft. Jalen joins a room that already includes the greatest touchdown scorer of all time in Raheem Mostert. In my opinion, again guessing, I do see this playing out as a 60-35-5 split, with Devonta seeing 60% of the carries and targets, along with Mostert seeing 35%, and finally Jalen Wright getting on the field for about 5% of snaps. This should be an offense that plays pretty fast under Mike McDaniel, and the 23 Dolphins under the same coaching staff were above league average on pass play percentage. They passed the ball on 57% of the team's plays. I don't see that changing a lot in 2024. However, I do believe, and the coaching staff has backed this up, there will be more of a focus on getting Achane more attempts through the air in the 2024 season. Getting Devon Achane in space seems extremely difficult to defend, especially when you have a guy like Tyreek Hill burning you deep, while Jalen Waddle is owning the intermediate area. That should leave a lot of instances where Achane is matched up one-on-one with a linebacker. And in those scenarios, I'm going to take Devon Achane to win that matchup 100% of the time. Achane, again, is going off the board as the running back number 7. However, he was the running back number 5 last season in running back fantasy points per game, even with the limited attempts through the air. I definitely prefer a player like Devon Achane over a player like Jonathan Taylor on DraftKings. Player number 6 on our list, and the last guy that we're not going to be interested in at their current ADP, is going to be the New Orleans Saints wide receiver Chris Olave, going off the board currently at pick number 19.9 or as the wide receiver 13. There's not a lot of positive things to say about New Orleans right now, and this offense was putrid in 2023. The offensive play calling for New Orleans quite simply may have been the worst offensive play calling during the 23 season, so it's no surprise that New Orleans brought in a new offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak in 2024. Bringing in Kubiak, I believe, will balance this offense out a bit. However, I foresee this offense being somewhat more spread out. And Alvin Kamara, while starting the age decline, was actually still very useful at the running back position in PPR settings, finishing as the RB number 3 in fantasy points per game. Kamara will likely secure a majority of the short and underneath stuff, which in my opinion will cap Olave's ability to get peppered with underneath target. That factor with New Orleans' history and spreading the ball around in the red zone limits the upside for Olave for me. Olave is one of the current players being drafted in the second round that, in my opinion, doesn't separate himself enough from round 3 guys in 2024. I foresee Chris Olave going off the board as a wide receiver 13 is somewhat disrespectful to players like Devonte Adams, who has shown year after year the ability to finish as a top 5 wide receiver at the position in PPR scoring. Olave has finished the last 2 seasons as wide receiver 20 in PPR fantasy points per game in 23 and wide receiver number 27 in PPR points in 2022. I do think that New Orleans could throw the ball more in 2024, but this is one of those situations where I just need to see it first. I think drafters have hitched their wagon to Olave, and he's going off the board where he is because drafters haven't found that player to support in round 2. Currently, I have Olave ranked in the 19 to 22 range on my draft board. If he lands at the end of round 2, I don't see an issue taking him, and I will view him and use him as an ace. But if I can avoid it, I won't be drafting him in my 2024 best ball draft. If for some reason you see yourself with Chris Olave at the top of your board, you're just going to have to believe. Thanks, Ted Lasso. Hey guys, that's going to do it for today's video. 3 players I think you can take advantage of in round 1 and round 2. And 3 players I think you should avoid. You want to view these players as your whole cards for those of you who play poker or who are familiar with the game. If you look down, you see that first ace. Cool. I got Christian McCaffrey. I got CD Lamb. I got Bijan Robinson. I got AJ Brown. Awesome. I got a guy that I can sit down, I can look at, and I say, hey, if this next card is nice, I'm putting a bet in. I'm 3-betting, right? You look down, bam, ace. What's that? Oh, man. Depending on what that round 2 pick is, if you get Chris Olave, 22 to 24, I'm going to go ahead and count that as an ace. You might end up in the middle of the round. You might have Devonte Adams, which has shown himself to be an ace year after year. Maybe he falls off in 24. Maybe he doesn't, right? Who knows? Or maybe you end up with a top of the second round guy like a Jahmyr Gibbs, Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, those type of players, Drake London. And I think you'll be fine in those scenarios as well. Whatever you end up deciding to do, the point is to have a plan. Pick the players that you think are going to go off in 24 and the players that you want to be a little bit behind on. Keep that in mind as you go throughout your drafts. Have a plan for your drafts. Stay safe out there. Have fun. Again, if you made it this far, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. We put out content every week. We're going to be doing more live drafts next week, so stay tuned if you guys want to join a draft and get in there with us. I think we're going to be going live Tuesday night. Stay tuned on the channel. We'll see you guys next time.